Imagine a situation where Russia attacks Amazon warehouses. Think of what that would mean for the prices of clothes, books, gifts that you order online. Will they rise? Will your deliveries be delayed or destroyed? These are questions Russians are currently grappling with because Ukraine is attacking Russia's Amazon. Wildberries is Russia's largest online marketplace, commonly referred to as Russia's Amazon. And for nearly 3 weeks now, Ukraine has attacked more than a dozen of its warehouses and storage facilities across Russia and occupied Crimea. Ukraine says these are providing logistic support to the Russian military. Let's get more from Fabrice Port here. He's CEO at Rasmussen Global, an international political consultancy firm, and he was also former director of policy planning at NATO for 6 years, if I'm not wrong. Fabrice, welcome. Thanks for making the time. There have been repeated Ukrainian attacks, including overnight on Wildberries facilities. Why is Ukraine attacking Wildberries?
Well, clearly there are different purposes here that are being pursued by the Ukrainian forces. First, Wildberries is clearly aiding the Russian war economy by supplying its armed forces, which you can assume means also supplying the whole logistic effort from Russia to occupy Ukraine. So that's one objective. But clearly there is a bigger objective at play here, which is to, in a way, bring back war to its sender, to continue on the mailing and Amazon image here. And I think they're going after a choke point. And Wildberry is, like you said earlier, the Russian Amazon, and therefore is in a way a choke point of the Russian society and economy. And look at the level of debt of the company, $10 billion of debt. This means that this company has to be supported by the state-owned banks. If not, if it were to go down, if it were to go bankrupt, it will probably have a domino effect on the economy. So in a way, just to conclude here, I think the Ukrainians are trying to target one of the companies that is supporting the Russian war machine, B, trying to also disrupt the way of life, the Russian way of life, and bring war back to where it comes from. And C, I think is trying to create a kind of economic sanction through kinetic means, because it's putting further pressure on the Russian economy.
Okay, a number of things to parse through, a number of things to discuss. Let's take up that first idea that Ukraine says this, that Wildberries is helping the Russian military with logistics. You also had the Wildberries CEO, Tatiana Kim, calling Ukraine, quote, terrorists. And she tried to push back against this Ukrainian claim that Wildberries is supporting the Russian military. Let's just listen to what she had to say.
When attacking us, terrorists cover up their true motives and accuse us of allegedly selling military goods. But you can go on any global marketplace like Amazon or Alibaba and see if we have what they don't. There's no logic, common sense or rationality in the terrorists' actions, and there can be none. The enemy itself has publicly stated that the attacks on Wildberries are aimed at ordinary citizens.
All right, so that was the CEO there. So is this an attack at ordinary citizens or an attack at a company that is allegedly supporting the Russian war effort?
Well, first, as you mentioned, this is the CEO, and this is the richest woman in Russia. Mm-hmm. And she, this is open source. She has a close relationship with Vladimir Putin. Her company was merged with another company some years ago, which was entirely supported by the Kremlin. So, and I think it's important to realize that the Russian economy is not a civilian economy in the sense as in Germany or anywhere else in the European Union. This is an economy where the oligarchs have been asked explicitly by Vladimir Putin to support the war efforts, to both give cash to basically public coffers, but also to mobilize their companies and their production capacity for the war effort. This is a country where more than 10% of the GDP goes into military capabilities. Mm-hmm. So there's no clear demarcation, I would say, as in other more benign, peaceful societies between war and peace. Mm-hmm. And so you can assume that Wildberries, being such a building block of the Russian economy, is also directly and indirectly supporting this and supporting possibly the logistic of the Russian forces. So I think it's important to focus on the peculiarity of the Vladimir Putin war economy and the fact that one of the largest Russian company cannot be said to be outside this war economy.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand. Wildberries is, yes, of course, the largest online retailer in Russia. But how does targeting Wildberries have such a big impact on the Russian war effort?
Well, look at what the Ukrainians have also been doing against the Russian logistic lines to resupply Crimea. I think you can see there is a very deliberate strategy since, I would say, 3-4 months to exert pressure not just on the Russian troops that are illegally occupying the Ukrainian territory, but on everything that support these troops. So I think this is part of this kind of in-depth or deep strike and pressure points that the Ukrainians are creating on the Russian war effort.
You were talking earlier about its connection to the Russian banking network. I mean, the name VTB, the Russian bank, comes up. What more can you tell us about that? And what is the leverage here that Ukraine potentially has?
Well, clearly, I think what you are contemplating here is that most probably VTB, a state-owned bank, will have to bail out Wildberries, which, as I mentioned, is completely over-leveraged and therefore needs some public injection of public money. And I think it's important to realize what it means right now for the Russian economy, which is already overheating, that is already at a high inflation, highly leveraged economy, which is trying to actually bring that low economy inflation to a cooler level. So this is obviously going to create further pressure on Putin's war chest. And creating a more complicated economic situation for him, which is, I think, what the Ukrainians are trying to do. This might not be producing a decisive outcome. This might not be producing a reverse of Putin's position on Ukraine, but this might actually start putting a higher cost on what he's doing there.
How many times over the past few years have we had a conversation about putting pressure on the Russian economy? We've talked about European sanctions. We've talked about US sanctions. Still, the war goes on. We're entering the 5th year now. I mean, is this going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, or is this going to be more of the same?
Well, it's a good question. I think clearly we are saying that there is no straw that breaks the camel's back as such. But there is an escalation of the economic cost of Putin's action and illegal invasion of Ukraine. And I think that's what the Ukrainians are trying to do through this in-depth strike.
Earlier you were talking about the impact on Russian consumers. We are, of course, talking about the largest online retailer, the online marketplace in Russia. Do you think Russia's consumers, do you not think that they are, very resilient? And the reason I bring this up is because, remember at the start of the war, lots of Western brands left the country. So Starbucks, IKEA, these are the brands that left. But there were other Russian entities that replaced them. I think, what is it? It is Stars Coffee replaced Starbucks, Swed House replaced IKEA, and Donato replaced Dunkin'. So there always appear to be alternatives that Russia is able to create for its consumers. Do you think something like that could potentially happen here, given that we're talking about what seems like a resilient consumer market?
Well, I think resilient, but also paying a much higher price, because actually it's not entirely correct that the Russians have been going for alternative brands. They're actually willing to pay a premium to buy the same goods they were buying before directly from Western brands, but this time via alternate, secondary economies like Central Asia and other countries that are still open to do business with Russia, and they're paying extremely high premium for this. So I think they are not given up on their addiction to luxury and comfort. And I think this is also what the Ukrainians are trying to do. They're trying to inject the notion that their country, Russia, has waged a 5-year illegal war against Ukraine. And you can't do that from sitting comfortably in your Russian living room ordering goods on Wildberries. There is a cost to that because this is a whole of a country effort. This is not a benign society. It's important to realize this. Vladimir Putin has been in power for 20 years. There's a Putin generation here. And the Russian population holds some degree of responsibility to what Putin is doing in Ukraine. If not, they would have been actually doing what it takes to actually change the course of things. And they have not done that. So I think the Ukrainians are trying to kind of really put a cost, not just on Putin's war economy and the cost of sustaining it, but also on this notion that you can be living in Russia in complete luxury and, consumer goods, comfort, and at the same time rape, kill, and destroy the Ukrainian society and country. And I think this is what the Ukrainians are trying to reverse and turn the table here.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Fabrice Pothier, CEO of Rasmussen Global. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for the time.
Pleasure.
And with no sign of the campaign against Wildberries slowing down, we will watch with interest to see just how far this pressures Russians and the Russian economy. And just this morning, the company announced that it would build a huge warehouse in Kazakhstan, presumably to keep its goods out of harm's way. The situation is moving fast. Keep up to date with all the latest here on YouTube or on our app or at dw.com.